Hi. How are you?
Good. It's really nice to meet you. How's your day going, Colin?
Good. I just have a few questions today.
Great.
So, my first question is, how did you get involved with politics?
I got involved mainly through community organizing. So I, around, I was teaching up at the University of Victoria, so teaching and thinking through and studying a lot of ideas around social movements and social justice. And around that time, there was a toxic soil dump up in Shawnigan Lake. It was proposed for the head of a watershed where my sister and my niece and nephew live, and so got involved in organizing with the community up there to try and stop that contaminated soil dump. And at the same time, I don't know if you remember Bill C-51. It was the Harper government's so-called anti-terrorism bill. It was this huge bill that actually restricted people's freedom of speech and really threatened environmental organizers and Indigenous organizers and their right to protest and to mobilize and kind of create these social movements. And so at that point, I started organizing kind of both around some environmental protection issues and around really fighting to protect our civil liberties. And through that, got more and more involved with community organizers here in Victoria. Those same community organizers, when a municipal election came along, asked me to run. And I had been working on Divest Victoria, so asking the municipal government to take their money out of fossil fuels, put them into environmentally sustainable investments, as well as on a bunch of housing issues, trying to make sure that we're protecting our more affordable rental units and actually building more housing for folks. And so I saw an opportunity and a way to make change. I had really been kind of pushing from the outside and trying to make change as an activist and as an organizer, and running and becoming a municipal councillor gave me a way to make change from the inside and actually be one of the people, the decision makers, changing policy. And so that was very exciting. And then when the federal election came along, my predecessor, Marie Rankin, asked me to run in his place. And for me, when I thought about the big issues that I care about, so affordable housing, the climate crisis, as much as I really value the work we did on City Council, it's really the federal government who has the funds and the responsibility to tackle these big issues, and that cities can't make meaningful progress unless they have a willing partner in the federal government. And so I jumped into federal politics, and here I am.
Do you have any advice for young people and teenagers that would like to get involved with politics in their community?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is to jump in. We need you. We need your voice. There are a lot of older folks involved in politics, and young people bring a new perspective. They also are the ones who are going to be most impacted by the climate crisis. It's their future that is at risk right now. And it's all of our collective futures, but especially young people. And I think right now, in particular, the voice of young people is really needed. And so if someone's a young person and interested in getting involved in politics, I think the first thing that I would recommend is to get involved in organizations or groups of people who are wanting to fight for the same things that you want to fight for, who value the same things, whether it's tackling the climate crisis or maybe it's changing some piece of injustice that's happening in your school, or maybe it is fighting for to kind of remove barriers for people with disabilities, whatever you feel really passionate about and you want to address in the world, find like-minded people and start organizing and working with them to make those changes. If you're interested in politics, you want to have experience stepping into leadership roles. And so when you find those organizations, when you find those groups, work with people, and when people ask you to step up and to take on more responsibility in that movement or in that group, step into those roles. You're going to make mistakes. It's always going to be hard, and it's going to be a learning experience, but it's so valuable. And that's the way, that is the path that leads to stepping into electoral politics. And I would say also, one of the things that I found on kind of my journey moving through community organizing to municipal politics to federal politics is that sometimes politics can be a hard and kind of conflictual place. People are arguing about things that they really care about, and occasionally things can get mean or nasty. And so to kind of find your people, find the people who share your values, create a kind of strength in that, and at the same time, never lose your ability to really listen to people on the opposite side, because they're going to bring fresh perspectives and different ways of looking at things. And so you want to kind of hold both of those pieces. It's, maintaining an openness to other perspectives while at the same time really making sure you're grounded in your values and have people around you who support you and care about the same things that you do.
What do you do most of the time as an MP?
It's so varied. It's everything from meetings like this. When I'm in my constituency, we have constituency weeks, and then we have Ottawa in session sitting weeks. And when I'm here in Victoria, a lot of it is meeting with organizations, meeting with individuals, hearing what matters to the people in my community, and either figuring out ways to help them achieve what they're wanting to achieve, or if there's a policy that isn't working for our community, isn't working for the people here, it's my job to listen to them and bring their voice to Ottawa and really fight for what they need changed. And then in Ottawa, it's everything from sitting on committees. I sit on the environment committee, and we do studies on electric vehicles, on climate policies. We analyze bills that come forward to the House, and bring in experts to really give us the best advice when it comes to creating environmental policies. Involves holding the government to account. One of the things that happened in committee was we found out, I invited the Auditor General and the Environment Commissioner to come, and we found out they don't have enough money to do the important work that they've been doing. They're doing way less environmental audits than they've ever done before. And so it's finding those things out and then pushing the government. And we actually successfully got more funding allocated to the Auditor General and therefore to the Environment Commissioner. It's also getting up in the House and speaking on the issues that I've heard about from my constituents. It is, whenever a bill comes forward, it's voting, it's giving statements and answering questions on those. And then it's also talking to the media and really getting the message out to Canadians about the work we're doing and trying to make sure that we are grounded in the needs of everyday Canadians.
What about being an MP do you enjoy most?
I like so much of it. I think each aspect of the job is really different. And in my constituency work, I think my favorite thing is just hearing from different corners of my riding, different people with different lived experiences. And when I can advocate for them and help them in some way, support them with something that is challenging them, that is so meaningful. It is really, really rewarding work. And then in Ottawa, when we successfully change a piece of legislation that I know is going to make a difference for Canadians from coast to coast to coast, that similarly, knowing that the work that we're doing is going to impact people in a positive way and make their lives easier or more enriched or more just. There's kind of nothing else like it.
What made you choose the NDP over other political parties?
Yeah, when I was looking kind of for a home electorally, and for people who share my values and who are going to fight for the same things that I want to fight for, and looking for a team to really work on these issues with, my top priority and the thing that I am probably most passionate about is addressing the climate crisis. And I see the climate crisis and environmental justice as kind of inextricably tied to and linked to social justice. And I think if we forget about how those two pieces go together, if we separate out environmental justice from social justice, if we focus on one without focusing on the other, either one, I think we're going to fail in our endeavors. And I saw in the platform of the federal NDP and in the voices that I was hearing from other members of Parliament, New Democrat members of Parliament, that deep understanding of how social justice and environmental justice have to go hand in hand, and have to be prioritized in the work that we're doing.
What do you think is the most important issue of our time?
Oh, I mean, definitely the one that kind of keeps me up at night and takes up the most of space in my brain and my thoughts is the climate crisis. We are right now, as a country and as a world, facing a global health pandemic, a global health emergency. And so, of course, that is top of mind, and that's a huge challenge. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's definitely something we're going to be dealing with for, I think, years to come, the impacts. But we can't forget that we are also facing a climate emergency and a biodiversity emergency. And if we do not act now, if we continue to push off action on climate change, on environmental protection, we are going to see huge impacts, biodiversity loss, impacts on our food systems, impacts on climate migration, and millions of people will die for no other reason than that politicians and leaders, decision makers, leaders seem unable to act and match the scale of their action with the scale of the crisis. And so I really think, as we're developing solutions to the climate crisis, we have to hold those things, that environmental justice and social justice go hand in hand. And so we need a climate plan and climate action that truly leaves no one behind.
What's the most difficult part of your job?
Difficult part of my job. That's a good question. I think it's changed over time, actually. I think initially I would have said some of the pieces around interacting with the media. I found it really challenging and kind of just a new way of dealing with people. And the kind of pressure of having little pieces of what you say clipped without having the full context. But now that I've been at this for longer, I've gotten more comfortable with it, and this feels less of a challenge. Definitely the flights back and forth, and it's been different in COVID times. I've been flying less. We've been able to do a lot of our work virtually, but it especially early in 2020, I was flying back to Victoria almost every weekend. So 2 out of my 7 days would be spent traveling for about 10 hours. And that was both hard, on my relationship, my family, hard on my body, but also, I, as someone who is fighting for climate justice, doesn't want to see that kind of air travel constantly. And so I think that piece definitely, I think there are ways that we could, and we've seen it actually in the pandemic, there are ways for us to do work differently where we have less of an impact on our environment and find ways to support people in living healthier lives.
Well, whenever you do a question period, how do you prepare?
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have a team of people who I work with, and so oftentimes we'll pitch a question, and so the night before question period, maybe I will pitch a question on Trans Mountain and the environmental and economic impacts of going ahead with a project that costs $20 billion or more and puts our coast at risk. I might have talked to someone in my constituency about the struggles they're facing and the need for a guaranteed annual income. So maybe I'll write up a pitch based on some of the experience. And then maybe I've talked to a small business who's really struggling right now. And there's a gap in some of the support systems for our small businesses who are startups. And so I'll write a pitch about that. So the night before, send off those pitches. The comms team will pick certain ones that are relevant to the day, or our leadership team will. And so then they'll contact MPs in the morning, whoever is going to be up in question period. And so if one of my questions was picked to go up, then I would more fully draft the 35 seconds. I'd work with my legislative assistant to make sure it sounds great. I might practice it with one of our comms press secretaries or comm supports. And then I would get up, if I'm here in Victoria, I'd get up virtually on Zoom. Or if I'm in Ottawa, I'd be sitting in my chair and I'd stand up when my turn comes and ask the minister a question.
And a bit of a follow-up, is there a select order for a question period about which MPs and which parties get to ask questions first?
Yeah, so it's time in question period is allocated based on the number of members of parliament you have in your party. And so for us, we would get usually a statement. So there's statements and then there's question period. And so we'd get one or two statements in the, maybe 30 statements that happen. And then, or 20 statements, 20 to 30 statements. And then in question period, we would get probably 5 questions to ask. Is that right, or is it 7? It's either 5 or 7. I can't remember in this moment, but it gets allocated based on the number of MPs. So a larger party, like the Conservatives, would get way more questions right now, whereas when we were official opposition, and the Conservatives were the third party, we got way more questions than they did.
And obviously the Liberal Party has more seats than the Conservative Party in the House of Commons, but they don't ask as many questions. Is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah, it's because they're currently government. And so government just gets a few questions, and it's for their backbencher MPs, so members of parliament who in the Liberal Party who are not cabinet ministers, have an opportunity to ask their government some questions from their constituents. But because each time we get up to ask a question of the government, it's the government rising and giving an answer, that's kind of considered their time.
Yeah, and I have one final question. What do you do in your free time?
Oh, great question. I mean, honestly, as a member of parliament, there's not a ton of free time. And it's, for me, it's worth it to be doing the work that I'm doing, and I'm willing to kind of give up some of that free time. When I do get time off, which I was really lucky over the holidays to have a little over a week off where I wasn't working at all, and I got to spend it with my partner. We went for walks. Normally, if it wasn't COVID times, I would gather with friends or go for, long hikes or overnight camping trips with friends. But right now, very quiet. And sorry, just one second. Sorry, that was just Susan, my staff member. I have a meeting that actually started about 5 minutes ago, so I've got to jump off.
Okay.
But it was really lovely to meet you. Thanks so much for reaching out, and good luck and everything. I hope that you are interested in getting involved in politics.
Yes, I definitely am.
Oh, wonderful. Well, please reach out to my office anytime.
Okay. Thank you for the interview. Bye.
Thanks so much, Colin. Take care.